They drag her through the dirt street by her wrists, the rope cutting into her skin like angry vines. Dust rose around her like smoke from an old fire. Her knees bled, her mouth was swollen, but her eyes never dropped. She did not scream. She did not beg. The townsfolk watched from their porches, some with folded arms, others with pity curdled into fear. No one moved. Not for Etta Lane. Not against the Delver name. Marvin Delver walked behind her like a man leading cattle. His hat sat crooked, his grin wide with cruelty. "You say no to me, girl," he called out, loud enough for all of Bitterwine to hear. "You say no, and this is what it buys you." The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't stop him either. "She was promised," he spat. "Promised and refused. That's theft. That's shame." He raised his hand high, a riding crop coiled in his fist. She did not flinch, and that was when the dust parted. A great black horse stepped through the crowd. Atop it sat a man draped in a dark coat, broad-shouldered, long in the jaw, eyes shadowed beneath a brim wide enough to cast judgment. Cash and Vane. Some knew the name. Others only knew the stories. The ranch he ran was 20 miles north and a world apart. No one came down from Vane Hill without reason. He said nothing, just looked at her. Then at Marvin. The silence cracked like thunder. Marvin stepped forward, emboldened. "This ain't your matter, Vane. Walk on." Cashin didn't blink. He leaned down, one hand outstretched. To her. Etta stared up at him. Dirt in her mouth. Rope biting her wrists. She didn't ask why. Didn't ask what for. She just reached. He pulled her up in one smooth motion, settling her on the saddle before him. Then turned the horse. Marvin shouted something. A threat. A curse. A call to arms. Cashin never turned. He rode. Out of Bitterwine. Out of fire. Into silence. She passed out an hour later. Blood loss. Bruised ribs. Frostbite along the fingers. Cashin wrapped her in a wool blanket. Laid her across his own bed, deep in the stone house on Vane Hill. He did not touch her beyond what was needed. He boiled water. Cleaned wounds. Lit the hearth. Left a tin cup of broth beside the bed. Then he sat by the window, watching the snow begin. He did not ask her name. He already knew it. 3 days passed before she could sit up. "You don't talk much," she rasped. Cashin turned from a fire. Shrugged once. "You don't scream much," he answered. She smiled with half her mouth. "Hurts too." He nodded. "Fair." They spoke no more that day. The 4th morning, she dressed herself. Came out onto the porch. He was splitting wood. She sat on the step. Watched him. "Why'd you do it?" "Because you said no." And he drove the axe down. Would crack like bone. Not enough men listen when a woman says that. Bitterwine buzzed with what happened. The Delvers raged behind closed doors. But Cash and Vane had his own law up on that hill. Armed ranch hands. Watchdogs. Reputation forged in violence and grief. They couldn't touch him. Not yet. But they would try. And he would be ready. Etta began to clean the kitchen. Repaired his coat. Sewed the lining of his gloves. Found a purpose in the quiet. He noticed. Didn't speak of it. But left her fresh coffee each morning. And half a biscuit wrapped in cloth. One night, the wind howled cruel. She found him on the porch, shotgun across his lap, eyes on the valley below. "They'll come," she said. "I know. You'll fight. Not for sport, but yes." She sat beside him. Wrapped her coat tight. "I can cook. I can stock the pantry. I know how to dress wounds." He looked at her. That long, deep look. Then stay. She nodded. Not for safety. For honor. For what no one else had given her. And so they waited. And when the first Delver gunman came, he did not live long enough to draw a second breath. Snow fell for 3 days without pause. The roads vanished. The fields became white oceans. Trees bowed beneath the weight. Bitterwine curled into itself like a dog in the cold, but up on Vane Hill, the fire burned hot, and the wolves kept their distance. Etta Lane moved through Cash and Vane's house like someone learning to breathe again. Her wrists bore scabs where rope had torn skin. Her eyes stayed dark from sleeplessness. But her hands, though unsteady, kept moving, folding blankets, chopping onions, stoking fire. Cashin said little, but he noticed everything. He patched the east barn in the storm, hauled water up from the frozen well, mended the gate to keep coyotes out. At night, he sat by the hearth with a ledger open on his lap, scribbling numbers that didn't seem to matter. He didn't speak of Bitterwine, didn't ask what they'd done to her. Didn't ask what she'd endured. And for that, she trusted him. She found his scars the second week. He'd taken off his shirt to clean a gash across his side. A barbed fence had caught him. She brought the iodine, kneeling beside him on the wood floor. That's when she saw them. Lines across his back. Old ones. Deep ones. Whip, she asked. Rifle butt. She dipped a cloth in hot water. Began to clean the wound. They do that to you? The Delvers. He looked at her. Not angry. Not ashamed. Just flat. No. Different men. Same kind. She didn't ask more. She cleaned his side, stitched him in silence. Afterward, she made soup. They ate without talking. But the silence was thicker. Warmer. She did not fear him. And he, somehow, did not carry the kind of violence that looked for victims. His violence had purpose. And it waited. Cashin had a room no one entered. Not the ranch hands. Not the horses. Not even dust. But on a cold afternoon, while looking for linen, Etta opened the wrong door. Inside, a cot. A small wooden cradle. A dress hung on a nail. A pair of tiny shoes. She didn't enter. Didn't need to. When he came home, she was setting plates on the table. He paused at the door. Looked at her a long moment. You saw. She nodded. I ain't sorry. You don't have to be. They sat. Ate in silence. Then she reached across the table. Placed her hand on his. You don't ask what they did to me. No. Why? Because it's yours. She nodded. That's what that room is, too. Yours. He didn't answer. But he didn't pull away. The snow thawed by week 3. Mud returned to the roads. Bitter wine resumed its slow, bitter rhythm. Cashin saddled his horse before dawn. Where you going? She asked. Into town. She stood on the porch in her coat, arms crossed tight. It ain't safe. For who? For you. For them. Doesn't matter. He looked at her. Something hard in his jaw. Something old. They hurt you. They think they ended it. You go to prove them wrong. I go to remind them that wrong breeds consequence. She stepped down. Took his arm. Don't go alone. He looked at her hand. Then mounted up. I never do. He came back that night with blood on his collar and a sack of beans in the saddlebag. She didn't ask whose blood. He didn't tell. But the next morning, word came through one of the hands. Lem Delver, cousin brute fool, was found in the alley behind the saloon. Arm broken. Jaw too. Eye swollen shut. Cashin stirred his coffee slow. What's the punishment for dragging a girl through the street? He asked. Etta didn't answer. She just passed him the sugar. They rode together into town a week later. Not as fugitives. Not as beggars. As fact. Cashin on his black gelding. Etta on the chestnut mare. He had broken himself, gentle but fast. The town stilled when they rode through. Marvin Delver stood on the porch of the mercantile, arms crossed, sweat on his brow despite the cold. Cashin didn't look at him. But Etta did. And didn't blink. Inside the store, she bought coffee, flour, salt. Paid in coin. Her hands no longer shook. Cashin spoke only once. You get what you need. Yeah. They left without hurry. A statement. Marvin didn't move. Didn't speak. But something in him cracked. And Cashin saw it. That night, Etta unpacked the flour, filled the cellar. Cleaned the wound Cashin had reopened lifting grain. She poured whiskey over the cut. That's smart, he asked. Keeps it clean. He hissed. She smiled. He drank from the bottle after. She sat beside him, close but not leaning. They'll come in numbers. Let them. You gonna kill them all? He didn't answer. She didn't press. But she stayed, and brought bullets to his table. Cleaned his guns. Took inventory of food, firewood, whiskey. He watched her move. Efficient. Calm. Loyal. He'd known killers. He'd known survivors. But Etta Lane was something else entirely. She was faith in human form. In the dark, after the oil lamp dimmed, she asked, who was the girl in the cradle? He lay on the cot, hands behind his head. My daughter. How old? 4. And the woman? My wife. Delvers. He nodded. They said the cattle rustled came from our side. We had none. They set the barn on fire. Thought we were inside. We weren't. Not yet. She said nothing. He closed his eyes. I saw them burn. From the ridge. I was bringing the wagon back. She crossed the floor. Sat beside him. You ever think of dying after? Every morning. Still do. He looked at her. Not today. Morning came slow. She made coffee, salted meat, tied back her hair. When he entered the kitchen, she was counting bullets. You know what you're doing? He asked. Not everything, but I know how to keep you alive. He poured a cup. Saturday. Then we plan. She nodded. Yes, we plan. And they did. Together. They came before dawn. 5 of them. Mounted. Armed. Wearing dust and Delver pride like armor. They didn't gallop, didn't shout. Just crept up the ridge of Vane Hill like wolves who thought the gate was open. It wasn't. Etta was already at the kitchen window when she heard the hoofbeats. She didn't scream. Didn't wake him. Just took the lantern, crossed the floor, and opened the bedroom door. Cashin was sitting on the edge of the bed. Boots already on. Eyes clear. How many? He asked. 5. He stood. Took his rifle. She handed him his coat. Coffee's on. He nodded. Won't take long. They waited at the fence line. One of them, the leader, called out. Cashin Vane, you got something don't belong to you. Cashin walked out of the barn's shadow like a man without fear. He held no rifle. Just his voice. She's not yours. She never was. She was promised. She refused. Refusal don't mean much to us. Then you've misjudged everything. The man spat. You can hand her over, or you can bury her. Your call. Cashin looked at the sun breaking over the ridge. We bury those who ride under the Delver flag, not the ones we keep. And from the shadow of the porch, Etta raised the shotgun. Not to fire, but to prove a point. They saw it, and 2 of the 5 shifted in their saddles. The first shot came from Cashin's hip. It was fast. Too fast. The leader dropped like a cut rope. His horse bolted. The other forscattered, returning fire as they moved. Cashin rolled behind the trough. Etta reloaded. He fired again. 1 rider fell. The 3rd tried circling around the barn, met a bullet clean through the chest. The last 2 rode for the trees. Cashin didn't chase. He stood. Checked Etta. She was calm. Still. Already bringing bandages, just in case. You hurt? She asked. Not mine. Their names. Don't matter. She nodded. I'll start the fire. By noon, the smoke rose from a pyre near the edge of the pasture. Etta stacked wood while Cashin dragged bodies. You think Marvin sent him? She asked. Marvin ain't that bold. Yet. Then who? Delver father. Old man's got longer reach. She looked out over the valley. He'll come next. Maybe. Maybe he'll send 10. You'll still kill them. If they mean harm. She paused. I'll need more flour. He smiled. That evening, Cashin rode to the far side of the ranch. Etta stayed behind. Prepared jerky. Sewed his torn cuff. Sorted ammunition. He returned at dusk, dragging something behind the horse, a sign. He planted it in the front yard. Trespassers are buried here. No paint. Just carved words, burned dark into the plank. She read it. Didn't comment. But poured him a drink. Night fell. You ever think it'll stop? She asked. Not soon. Not clean. You afraid? No. Me neither. They drank. In the morning, she gave him a list. Salt, sugar, bullets, nails. He looked at her handwriting. You trust me to come back? She smirked. I trust you better not die. He tucked the list into his coat. Rode out. He came back with more than supplies. He came back with news. Marvin had put out word, bounty on Cashin. $200. Dead, not alive. The saloon whispered it. The mercantile clerk nodded it. The sheriff hadn't said no. They'll come in 2s, then 3s, Cashin said, unloading the bags. Etta took them. Stacked the flour. Then we don't sleep. We rotate. I'll take first. And that was how it began. Not just survival, but siege. A quiet one. And Cashin Vane did not run. He sharpened his knives. Cleaned his guns. Waited. And Etta Lane kept him ready. Spring clawed through the last of winter's frost, and with it came movement. Riders. Letters. Coin. The bounty on Cashin's had doubled. 200 became 4. 4 became 6. Marvin Delver had gone quiet. His father had not. Etta read the signs. Boots too fresh on the back trail. Empty cartridges by the well. A cow spooked by scent, not sound. They were being watched. And war was coming. Cashin reinforced the ranch with a builder's hand. Not rushed. Not reckless. Every beam renailed, every hinge tightened. He walked the perimeter at dusk and dawn, Etta at his side with a notebook, marking what needed fixing. "You still sleep?" she asked one night, as he lit the last lantern. "Enough to kill. Not enough to rest." He looked at her. Long. "I'll rest when it's done." She didn't press. She just brewed coffee, sharpened blades, boiled linen. One evening, Cashin returned from town slower than usual. Blood on his collar. A new scar across his temple. Etta said nothing. Just took his coat, cleaned the cut, wrapped the bandage. He winced. She steadied his head. "How many this time?" "3. All of them." He nodded. "More'll come. Let them." But his hands trembled when she turned away. Etta began keeping count. In her journal, March 12th, 1 found in the woods. Cashin limping. March 20th, 2 tried the back door. Shot before sunrise. April 2nd, fire near the shed. Extinguished. No injuries. She kept his weapons clean. Laid out spare shirts. Started writing a will. His, hers, the ranch's. Not because she expected to die. Because she expected to win. And someone would need to count the cost. By mid-April, Bitter Wine was silent. No travelers. No merchants. The town held its breath. And Cashin knew why. "They're building something," he said. "A final swing." Etta nodded. "Then we build faster." He looked at her, as if seeing something new. "You never asked me to stop." "Would you have?" "No." "Then there's no need to lie about mercy." On the last Sunday of the month, a courier came. Not a fighter. Just a boy. He handed Etta a sealed note. Cashin read it. Once. Twice. Then handed it to her. "We want terms. Meet us at Hollow Point. Just you. No rifles. No woman." Cashin folded the note. Burned it in the stove. "It's a trap," Etta said. "Yes." "You're going anyway." "Yes." She poured whiskey. "Set it down. Then take the good boots. And leave me the rifle." At Hollow Point, Cashin found them. Marvin, his father. 6 riders. All armed. Waiting by the old well. "Cashin Vane," the elder Delver said. "Thought you'd come crawl." "I don't crawl." "Then kneel." Cashin drew. 2 shots. 1 rider down. Another screamed. The rest fired. He moved like a ghost. Steel and silence. Took a bullet to the shoulder. Kept going. Dropped 2 more. Then he faced Marvin. The coward trembled. Raised his pistol. Fired. Missed. Cashin didn't. 1 shot. Clean. Marvin fell. The elder Delver tried to run. Cashin didn't chase. Just said, "That was for my daughter." And walked away. He rode back in the dark. Bleeding. Exhausted. Etta met him at the gate. Helped him from the horse. "You won. It's done." She took his face in both hands. "Then you can rest." And for the first time in years, he did. She sat beside the bed. Held his hand. Never let go. Not once. The war was over. And what remained was only the healing. They buried the last of the Delver riders in a ravine where the wind couldn't reach. No markers. No prayers. Just dirt over dirt, and Cashin's silence above it. For 2 weeks after Hollow Point, the world held still. No horses on the ridge. No boots by the well. No more names whispered in the dark. Etta could walk to the barn without a pistol on her hip. But still, she looked back. The sky was too quiet. And peace, she knew, was just a breath before thunder. Cashin healed slow. His shoulders stiffened in the rain. His left hand trembled when tired. But he trained with it anyway. Every morning before breakfast, he drew and fired 5 rounds at the far fence. Etta watched from the window. Brewed coffee. Folded his shirts. Added names to her ledger of the dead. 22, she said one night. "That's how many came." "Not enough," Cashin answered. "You wanted more." "I wanted them to know." "They do." He drank. The town of Bitter Wine didn't change overnight. But change began. The sheriff, once silent, now nodded when they passed. The store clerk gave discounts unasked. The women, those who'd watched Etta dragged and said nothing, now left bread at the edge of her saddle. None apologized. They didn't need to. They just stopped looking away. On a rainy Thursday, a girl knocked at the ranch door. 14. Bruised lip. Eyes too old. "They said you'd help," she told Etta. Cashin watched from the porch. Etta took the girl's hand. Led her inside. No questions. Just soup, bandages, a place to sleep. By spring's end, 3 more came. Then 7. Runaways, widows, survivors. Cashin built a bunkhouse. Etta planted more corn. They called the place Haven. And it was. One night, fire broke in the southern hills. An accident. Or sabotage. No one knew. Cashin rode to Bitterwine. Returned with 2 wagons of orphans. Etta cleared the barn. Rolled out blankets. She didn't ask why. She just did. Because she had learned, sometimes the quietest men carry the loudest grief. And the ones who build are not always spared from burning. One afternoon, Cashin rode alone. He came back with a bottle of scotch and a letter. He handed it to Etta. It was from a judge. In Austin. All Delver lands seized. Title voided. Vane holdings legally uncontested. She read it twice. So it's over. Legally. Legally. And morally. He looked out over the hills. Still bleeding. But it'll scar. The next day, Cashin rode down into Bitterwine. Alone. He didn't carry guns. Only papers. He signed over parcels of land to families who'd lived under Delver shadow. Reopened the schoolhouse. Rebuilt the blacksmith's forge. No one stopped him. Some said thank you. Most just watched. He returned at dusk. Boots muddy. Quiet. Etta didn't ask how it went. She just poured his drink. And watched him take off his hat like a man stepping out of war. By summer, the ranch had tripled in size. But it was quiet. Gentle. There were children's voices. Laughter. Chickens. Rain. Cashin still carried his rifle. But not everywhere. Etta still salted meat, still tracked storms. But she smiled more. Talked more. And one night she said, if this is what comes after revenge, then maybe revenge has its place. Cashin didn't answer. He just took her hand, held it, and didn't let go. Years passed. Not loudly. Not fast. But steady, like rivers cutting stone. Cashin Vane aged into his strength. Silver crept into his beard, but his eyes stayed sharp. Etta Lane grew into quiet authority. Her hands, once bruised and thin, now strong with work and winter. The ranch lived, not just in cattle and fields, but in laughter, in safety, in peace won by steel and kept by grace. They married in spring. No crowd, just hands held beneath a wide sky. The sheriff read the vows. The children tossed petals. Etta wore a cotton dress. Cashin wore his best hat. It wasn't fancy. It was true. And every night, he slept beside her. Every morning, she brewed his coffee. A ring on her finger, weathered by work and fire. Haven grew. The bunkhouse became 2. Then 5. Children learned to ride before they could spell. Women healed. Some stayed. Some moved on. But all of them left stronger than they came. Cashin never asked their stories. Etta heard every one, and kept them like seeds in her ledger. They built a new barn the year the rains broke. Cashin worked the beams with a cracked shoulder. Etta cursed him for it. He grinned through the pain. Still got 2 arms. You'll lose one to stubbornness. Then I'll split wood with my teeth. She threw a rag at him. But later that night, as he soaked in the tin bath, she washed his back with gentler hands. No words, just the quiet of belonging. By the 5th year, Bitterwine had changed. The Delver name was a curse no one spoke. The schoolhouse opened full-time. The sheriff retired. The forge hired apprentices. Cashin sold some land to town. Refused a statue. Accepted a handshake. He still walked armed, but more out of habit than fear. Etta ran the books. Managed the house. Rode the perimeter with a spyglass. They worked in rhythm. Not just as man and wife, but as something stronger. Partners forge and fire. On their 10th spring, they sat by the porch. She watched the children race in the grass. He smoked his pipe. Listened. You ever think of leaving? She asked. And go where? Somewhere softer. He shook his head. We made this soft. Soft costs blood. I won't run from what we paid for. She nodded. Me neither. That night, the wind was gentle. She stood at the window, watching the hills. He came behind her. Wrapped his arms slow around her waist. She leaned back. You think this lasts? It already has. They stood like that a long time. And in the morning, their son cried in the cradle. They had 2, Samuel and June. Both wild and kind. Raised in fields, taught by scars, loved without fear. No saddle beneath them. No chain between them. Just the freedom of peace earned. And the bond of those who chose each other. Again and again, without ever needing to say it. At Haven, they wrote no commandments. Only 3 rules. Come as you are. Do no harm. Protect what heals you. They followed them every day. And in the end, Cash and Vane and Etta Lane did not ride into sunset. They stayed, because some hearts aren't meant to run. They're meant to root and grow together.